gods from the sky. Extraterrestrial beings claim to have lived on Earth before us. Some researchers suggest they are divine entities who designed humans. The Anunnaki. But where did these beings come from? Why did they choose Earth? Did they really initiate human history? How did they become one of the greatest mysteries of human history? Let's try to explore this mystery together. Welcome to my channel called The Discovery of Mystery, where we will unveil the curtains of secrets. I want to start by referring to Swiss author Erich von Däniken, the author of Chariots of the Gods, a book I read years ago and was deeply influenced by for a long time. When Erich von Däniken published his book in 1968, which conveyed years of research, he left a significant impact on the world. In this book, he talked about how civilizations living in different parts of the world used similar symbolisms, believed in similar myths, and somehow had similar architectural structures and technologies. He also addressed the influences of extraterrestrial beings on these civilizations in his book. Through his research, he introduced a new term, ancient astronauts, to the literature. The concept of ancient astronauts is based on the idea that Earth was visited by aliens long ago. This idea suggests that aliens who visited Earth long ago somehow initiated human history and influenced the development of humanity. It attributes the ability of humanity to construct structures that were deemed impossible at that time and to propel civilizations forward to this idea. Formations like the Nazca Lines, which can only be understood from the air, structures carrying traces of technical knowledge from that era, like the Egyptian pyramids, the presence of similar stone craftsmanship, similar mythologies, and structures in different geographical locations on Earth all support this idea. Of course, this topic brings along the question, what if what we've been told about the past isn't true? What if humanity has a much older and shared history than we know? One of the most prominent figures who conducted research on this question is Zecharia Sitchin. As an Azerbaijani-born scientist and Sumerologist, Zecharia Sitchin presented his famous book, The Earth Chronicles, which he named after the 12th planet in 1976, and introduced his renowned work, The Earth Chronicles, to the world. These works drew even more attention to this topic. With Zecharia Sitchin's research, a new term entered our lives, the Anunnaki. Let's embark on a journey into the past. Let's go to Mesopotamia, where many civilizations once thrived. According to the history we know, around 4500 BC, the Sumerian civilization emerges with all its mystery. The Sumerians, known for being the civilization where writing was used and developed, where mathematics and astronomy flourished, also introduced concepts such as the first healthcare system, the first laws, the first library, the invention of the wheel, irrigation techniques in agriculture, the use of the plow in agriculture, and the first calendar into our lives. This level of advancement raises some questions. How did the Sumerians suddenly emerge as such an advanced civilization? Could the Sumerians have been an extension of an even older and more advanced civilization? When we examine ancient myths such as Enuma Elish, Atrahasis, and the Epic of Gilgamesh, we encounter beings known as the Anunnaki, who are portrayed as superior to humans. The Anunnaki are divine beings described in Sumerian mythology as originating from beyond Earth and as the creators of humanity. They are the ancient entities responsible for the emergence of the Sumerians as an advanced civilization onto the stage of history. The Sumerians, an ancient people who lived in Mesopotamia, formed one of the oldest known civilizations in world history. The term Anunnaki frequently appears in ancient legends and myths, often playing significant roles in the creation of humanity or in the lives of humans. The word Anunnaki generally translates to meanings such as heavenly ones or those who came down from heaven. Historical remnants or epics do not clearly specify when or why these beings came to Earth. However, there are some information proposed following Zecharia Sitchin's research. According to these, the Anunnaki came to Earth 400,000 years ago to mine gold due to the weakening of the atmosphere on their own planet. However, this is a hypothesis, and Sitchin's assumption has not been supported by any evidence. When we look at the Epic of Enuma Elish, it talks about a war of the gods that took place before the formation of Earth. After this war, Earth was formed, and the Anunnaki were tasked with maintaining the order of the newly created world. While the reasons for their coming are not clearly known, Some information has been obtained about what they did after coming to Earth. The most important of these is their creation of humans, thus formally initiating human history. In the 19th and 20th centuries, various scientists, archaeologists, and historians, including Henry Rawlinson, Austen Henry Layard, Leonard Woolley, Sir Max Mallowan, Henry Frankfurt, and Samuel Noah Kramer, conducted various excavations in Mesopotamia to understand the Sumerian civilization and culture. In these excavations, they discovered various Sumerian tablets and other artifacts. As a result of these discoveries, information about the Anunnaki, which had been hidden for thousands of years, emerged and became one of the most intriguing topics in human history with all its mysteries. One of the most important pieces of information obtained about the Anunnaki is that they initiated human history. When we look at the teachings of representatives of the Abrahamic religions today, they tell us that humans are the most special, the most developed, and the most sacred of all created beings. Except for Judaism, there is little information in other religions that suggests humans are this sacred. Most often, Holy Scriptures describe humans as valuable and honorable beings. However, in Holy Scriptures, it is frequently mentioned that humans' sole duty is to obey and worship God, and if they fail to do so, they will be punished. Additionally, when we look at the teachings of religious representatives, we see that they talk about how humans' biological structure was created perfectly. However, upon further reflection, we cannot necessarily say that this is entirely true. We know, of course, that our bodies have organs with very well-functioning features. However, along with that, we also have many physical imperfections. Our bodies do not have very high resistance to cold, heat, impact, and various illnesses. From the moment we are born, we are dependent on care for years. There are other species on Earth that are better adapted to life than us. Not only physically, but also spiritually, we have a very fragile structure. In short, even though we manage to be the dominant species on Earth in some way, we are actually quite ordinary creatures. Indeed, based on archaeological excavations and research, the situation described in ancient tablets and inscriptions, which are much older than the Abrahamic religions, is exactly like this. That is, humans are portrayed as quite ordinary and helpless. Now, I will attempt to narrate a compiled and synthesized version of the information about the Anunnaki found in ancient tablets, inscriptions, and epics. When the Anunnaki first came to Earth, there was another group of beings who accompanied them and served to meet their needs, the Igigi. These beings undertook tasks such as building the Anunnaki's temples, infrastructure works, and ensuring the food supply. There is an important point here that should not be overlooked. Although ancient civilizations referred to the Anunnaki as gods, they clearly stated that they also had basic needs such as shelter and sustenance. So, can we consider the Anunnaki, described as divine beings, as beings of flesh and bone? How is it that the Anunnaki are referred to as divine beings? Let's continue. When we delve a little deeper, your questions will be answered. The Igigi eventually rebelled due to the heavy tasks they were performing. Enki, a wise and creative god who was one of the Anunnaki, could not remain indifferent to this rebellion and began working on a solution to the problem. The goddess Ninmah also assisted Enki in his efforts. Their goal was clear: to create a being capable of performing the heavy tasks that the Igigi no longer wanted to do. For this purpose, they began genetic experiments. Initially, the created beings did not turn out as desired. Some of their organs and limbs were not as intended, and the experiments failed. Of course, in these experiments, Enki also utilized something from Earth. Zecharia Sitchin has suggested in his assumptions that this something was monkeys. After long efforts and experiments, Enki and Ninmah succeeded in creating the first human, Adapa, in the likeness of the gods. Subsequently, the work enabling the first human to reproduce with their own kind was completed, and thus, the human population began to increase. In Sumerian texts, the name of the first human created by Enki is stated as Adapa. However, the name of the first woman is not mentioned. Enki loves Adapa deeply and regards him as his own son. This love and devotion lead Enki to impart various knowledge and teachings to Adapa. Over time, as humans become knowledgeable about basic skills, they begin to perform tasks that the Igigi no longer want to do under the dominion of the Anunnaki. They undertake tasks such as building the ziggurats, which are the homes of the Anunnaki. Additionally, they try to win the favor of the Anunnaki by offering them food and beverages such as red meat, fruits, vegetables, beer, and wine. Thus, all the burdensome tasks are assigned to humans, who become laboring slaves. Particularly the responsibility for mining gold, especially in the mines, is now in the hands of humans. The issue of assigning the task of mining gold to humans is an important detail. Especially in the Enuma Elish tablets, it mentions the Anunnaki's fondness for gold and provides information on how to extract gold from mines. In Zecharia Sitchin's research, it is claimed that the Anunnaki used gold mines to fix the atmosphere of their own planet. However, this claim is a hypothesis and has not been conclusively proven. Nevertheless, the importance attributed to gold by the Anunnaki has led to gold being considered a divine metal in human civilizations. For example, Egyptian pharaohs demonstrated their divine rule to their people by covering their bodies with gold. This practice is based on a tradition from Egyptian mythology. As in ancient Egypt, gold was known as the metal of the gods and was believed to conceal the secrets of the gods. Throughout history, gold has been seen as a symbol of divine power in many civilizations. You can find similar information not only in ancient Egypt, but also in Greek myths and Hindu legends. In Greek myths, it is told that the palaces and belongings of the gods are made of gold. In Hindu legends, it is expressed that gold is the metal of the gods. Another point that caught my attention in ancient tablets and texts is worth emphasizing. The Sumerians and subsequent civilizations describe the Anunnaki as gods descending from the sky. However, in reality, the Anunnaki behave like humans and have human needs. We can understand this especially from detailed descriptions in ancient tablet texts and epics. The Anunnaki possess human emotions such as love and hate. They can feel jealousy and experience love. They can engage in sexual intercourse with humans. They have the need to eat. In fact, they are much like flesh and blood humans. Of course, they are much more advanced than humans. Their physical structures are also larger than those of humans. In fact, the Anunnaki exhibit more human characteristics than divine ones. Ancient civilizations regarded them as gods. However, human nature assigns divine meaning to events and beings that exceed human understanding and logic. Humans, therefore, have regarded the Anunnaki as gods because they struggled to understand the knowledge, abilities, and technology possessed by the Anunnaki. As a result, they began to worship the Anunnaki. According to epics, humans multiplied over time. As humans multiplied, the nature of the relationships between humans and Anunnaki changed, and the Anunnaki began to engage in relationships with humans they favored. After a while, humans began to become disobedient and unwilling to serve the Anunnaki. Here we can say that due to the changing nature of relationships over time and the development provided by humans, the hierarchical structure between humans and Anunnaki began to deteriorate. Of course, this situation also disturbs the Anunnaki. In fact, Enlil, one of the prominent Anunnaki who is depicted as the god of the sky in Sumerian mythology, becomes quite angry about this situation. Due to what has happened, he decides that all existing humans should be killed in order to create a more obedient type of human. He decides to accomplish this with a flood. Here, the Anunnaki may have the power to cause a great flood, or they may have foreseen a great flood due to natural reasons. We do not have clear information on this. Enlil's decision due to humans' disobedience is clear. However, Enki feels a great affection for humans and is not willing to accept their extinction. Therefore, Enki warns Ziusudra, a human he loves, and tells him to build a ship to escape the impending disaster, to protect his family and the designated animals on the ship. Ziusudra fulfills Enki's request and, by doing so, escapes from the terrifying flood. When the flood ends, his ship lands on dry land, and a new era begins between gods and humans. Meanwhile, you can also access this information by examining the Epic of Ziusudra. As a result of excavations in Nineveh in the year 1872, the same information emerges in a different way. This time, once again, Enki comes to Utnapishtim's tent and warns him of a great flood. Utnapishtim, heeding Enki's warning, builds a ship within 7 days. Thus, he manages to protect many people and animals, including his family, from the flood. After the flood, when Utnapishtim's ship lands on dry land, he begins to release birds into the sky while waiting in his ship. Trying to understand whether the flood has ended, Utnapishtim becomes sure when the birds do not return, and he disembarks and establishes a new life. After a while, Enlil becomes aware that humans have survived and becomes very angry. He shouts in anger, "How could humans survive?" Enki, who has never been willing to accept the extinction of humans, intervenes and soothes Enlil's anger. In fact, Enki and Enlil have a meal together, and the tension is resolved. Thus, a new era begins for humans. Subsequently, as we learn from various myths and epics, a great event, namely, a war of the gods, occurs once again. Following this event, the Anunnaki depart from Earth. After their departure, humans, who were given life and taught many things by the Anunnaki, established the Sumerian civilization around 4500 BCE. The story of the Anunnaki, extraterrestrial beings, as derived from ancient tablets and epics, can be summarized as follows. Here indeed there are intriguing points. Events mentioned in the sacred texts of Abrahamic religions are also found in tablets, epics, and myths written thousands of years ago. How is this possible? Moreover, research conducted in various parts of the world reveals similar details. When humans encounter consistent portrayals of extraterrestrial beings like the Anunnaki across different myths, tablets, and epics from various regions of the world, questions inevitably arise. Could these beings truly be the creators of humanity? Could the Anunnaki be at the root of all religions and myths? Let's delve a bit deeper into this. Upon investigating traces of Sumerian myths, which date back thousands of years and are found all around the world, we observe that similar information and stories parallel what the Sumerians narrated. For instance, the Anunnaki hierarchy comprises three primary deity figures: Anu, Enlil, and Enki. Additionally, there is mention of a council of gods consisting of a total of 12 gods and goddesses. Similarly, in Egyptian mythology, the main deity Amun is followed by important characters such as Osiris and Set. Additionally, there are known to be 12 divine Horus eyes in Egyptian mythology. These eyes symbolize different gods and are generally regarded as symbols of divine protection and power. When we look at ancient Greek mythology, we encounter the trio of Kronos, Zeus, and Poseidon. The Council of 12 main gods and goddesses residing on Mount Olympus closely parallels Sumerian belief. In Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are known as the supreme creator gods. In Hindu mythology, there is also a council of 12 sun gods. The concept of the Council of 12 gods and goddesses in all mythologies later appears in Christianity as the 12 apostles of Jesus, in Islam as the 12 imams, and in Judaism as the 12 tribes of Israel. As you can see, the concept of the triad of supreme creator gods and the accompanying myths repeat consistently across all mythologies and subsequent Abrahamic religions. Here, there is certainly a point we should not overlook: the tablets, myths, epics. These provide us with enlightening information about many civilizations. All of these civilizations are located in vastly distant regions of the world. Communication between the people living in these civilizations during those times was nearly impossible. Nevertheless, the descriptions of the Anunnaki are almost identical. The myths are nearly consistent with each other. This is truly the most intriguing detail that makes this topic fascinating. As we delve deeper into this topic, we see that there are also similarities in Abrahamic religions that resemble the Sumerians. One of the common themes is the Great Flood. The Great Flood is a recurring event in all Abrahamic religions and myths. It is narrated in all civilizations around the world to have occurred for the same reason: the corruption of humanity, their abandonment of reverence for the gods, and their focus on their own advancement. In these stories, it is emphasized that the surviving humans were saved by a ship, and that a new era began with the forgiveness of humanity by the god or gods. Another similarity is the expectation of the gods or divine beings to return to Earth one day to restore order for a reason. People believe in a celestial deity figure that creates civilization and expect this deity to return one day to save humanity from the impending destruction. This belief gradually evolves into the belief in a savior Messiah, or Mahdi, in Abrahamic religions. This is also in line with the belief in the return of the Anunnaki in Sumerian culture. Let's also look at the creation of the world. In Abrahamic religions, it is mentioned that the earth was created in 6 days. Especially in the Quran and the Torah, the concept of creation in 6 days is prominently highlighted. Actually, we always say about God, He commands, and it is. So why is it not like that here? Why does the creation of the earth take 6 days? Let's look at the Sumerians. When we look at the Sumerian creation tablets, the number 6 also appears. In the creation tablets, there are 6 fundamental creation steps. The first step is the formation of order from chaos. The second step is the creation of the gods. The third step is the separation of heaven and earth. The fourth step is the shaping of the earth. The fifth step is the creation of life. And the sixth step is the creation of humans. This information in the Sumerian creation tablets is almost identical to what is found in the Torah. Isn't that really interesting? When we look at the creation of humans, we again see similarities between Abrahamic religions and the Sumerians. In the Sumerian tablets, it is narrated that the Anunnaki created humans in their own likeness. A similar narrative is also present in the Quran and the Torah. Let's also touch on the depiction of God in the Holy Scriptures. When you read both the Quran and the Torah, an interesting detail about God emerges. God is often depicted as a being with fluctuating moods and different personalities in these Holy Scriptures. What I mean is that sometimes God is forgiving, sometimes punitive. Sometimes depicted as compassionate and protective, and other times portrayed as a force spreading fear and terror. In some places, the concepts of good and evil are considered as a result of free will, and it is emphasized that every individual will be judged based on their actions after death. In some places, interestingly, certain communities and tribes are destroyed for their actions without waiting for judgment after death. So, what I mean to say is that in some sections of the Holy Scriptures, God is described not as an all-powerful superior force, but rather as a being with more human-like characteristics and ambitions. This narrative style used in the depictions of God in the Holy Scriptures actually resembles the behavioral traits of the Anunnaki. Here I want to touch on the concepts of sin and reward. In the Holy Scriptures of Abrahamic religions, in simplest terms, it is narrated that those who do good and worship God will be rewarded and go to heaven, while those who forget God and do evil will be punished. In the Holy Scriptures, God is both forgiving and punishing. In the Sumerian tradition, the concepts of sin and reward are as follows. If humans keep the gods pleased and serve them, they will be rewarded without any problem. However, if humans anger the gods by making mistakes or no longer serve the gods, they can be severely punished. These pieces of information are indeed very intriguing, aren't they? Another area where there is similarity between Sumerian beliefs and Abrahamic religions is the obligation of humans to obey the gods. In Sumerian mythology, the gods expect humans to obey them and perform rituals and therefore punish those who fail to meet these expectations. When we look at Abrahamic religions, we see that obedience is fundamental to the belief. In all Holy Scriptures, it is expected that humans obey God and fulfill their worship without fail. The same applies to Akkadian mythology. In Akkadian mythology, Marduk is an important god. It is known that Marduk rewards those who serve him and punishes those who do not respect him by sending them to a realm filled with suffering called Aralu. So here we have a similar depiction to the concepts of heaven and hell, especially a God who rewards those who serve and punishes those who do not. Reminds us not of an omnipotent being, but of a powerful entity with human caprices, made of flesh and bone. Therefore, the question we asked at the beginning of our video comes to our minds once again. What if humanity has a much older and shared past than we know? The question, the surprising similarities between the myths of the Sumerians, the civilizations established following the Sumerians, and the Abrahamic religions reinforce the idea that religions, beliefs, and myths are based on a shared past. Belief is an important concept for me, too. In this video, I tried to explain not only the mysterious connections between religions on Earth in the past, but also that history is not just about the information passed down to us from the past to the present. I just didn't want to prolong the video too much. I tried to show that there are much deeper mysteries and that looking at events from outside the usual frameworks is the most accurate way. You can also research and explore the topic in all its depth. Also, as I approach the end of my video, there is one more point I want to mention. These narratives should not affect your beliefs, because we believe in an omnipotent creator, The possibility of the Anunnaki actually existing does not undermine the belief in a creator who is all-powerful. If it is true, it only shows that the Anunnaki intervened in the design of humans. Frankly, think about where we are today in science and technology. With genetic studies, humans can manipulate the genes of animals. The reason for the genetic diversity of animals like cats and dogs is humans. Genetic engineering has advanced to the point where we can now modify the physical characteristics of a baby while it is still in the womb. Humans can now perform biological design tasks to a certain extent. When researching ancient civilizations and the Anunnaki, we need to consider such realities. Thank you for watching the video. I hope this video has been beneficial for those interested in and researching the subject. You can find numerous books and different materials to research this topic. I definitely recommend reading and researching. If you liked the content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned. You can support my channel by liking and commenting on the content. I would especially appreciate your thoughts and comments on the topic discussed in this video. Until we meet again.